It's my pleasure now to welcome our next session, which is a plenary on Asian American women in political leadership. And during this panel, you will hear from Asian American women who have held different types of political leadership positions. They will share how their different identities and lived experiences have shaped their political identity. So please welcome our very own Director of Programs and Community Engagement, Danielle Moon, and she will be able to introduce the other three, the panelists. So if we can invite the panelists to step up to the stage.
Hello, can everyone hear me? Great. So excited to get the summit started. So again, my name is Danielle Moon. I'm the Director of Programs and Community Engagement at APAICS. This is our first plenary on Asian American women in political leadership. So let's go ahead and get started on the panelist introduction. So starting here, Shang Tao is a council member. She was elected in 2018, and as the first Hmong American woman council member in California's history. And she currently serves as the council president pro tem. She received the 2021 Powerful Women of the Bay Award and was honored by the Alameda Labor Council as champion for working families. And next, Nima Kokarni. She's a Kentucky State Representative of the 40th Legislative District. Nima became the first Indian immigrant to be elected in the history of Kentucky legislature. Lots of firsts, which is great. She was awarded the Daniel M. Alvarez Champion of Justice Award for her social justice work, fighting to combat racial and ethnic stereotyping during the rise in anti-Asian hate. So thank you so much for that work. She also co-founded a podcast called Where Are Y'all Really From? Where she showcases Asian American stories in Kentucky. So I would love to hear more about that. Last but not least, Janie Lowe. She's a former President's Advisory Commissioner of the White House Initiative on Asian American and Pacific Council, also known as WIAPI. Janie has deep expertise in the private sector as well as public service. She worked for Fortune 500 companies for 12 years prior to joining public service. She was appointed and served as commissioner of WIAPI under President Trump, and she continued to serve under President Biden until May 2021. She currently serves on the advisory board for the Young Asian Pacific American Leaders and is a director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council of Women's Chamber of Commerce of Nevada. Nevada, I'm sorry. I took notes during Selena's remarks. So with that, these are just a few highlights of the amazing accomplishments of these three panelists we have today. So they're going to share their stories. It's story time. So they'll discuss how they got into politics and why, who is their support network, and how they were able to tie their API heritage into their political journey. So I'm going to start with Sheng.
Good morning, everyone. How's everyone feeling? Feeling good? Good. Awesome. I just want to say, okay, first of all and foremost, shout out to APAICS, Madeline, her team, Danielle, Ivory. Where is Ivory? Is she here? She's outside. So everybody, give a round of applause for all of these powerful women. Thank you so much for putting it together. As stated previously, my name is Shang Tao. I am the first Hmong American woman to be city council in the state of California. And it's a great thing. And it's a sad thing, right? I think that our previous speaker has spoke to this, and so it's not about just getting to the position, but it's about lifting while you climb. And that's a huge mantra of mine, is that we must lift while we climb. And so for me, in 2018, so I actually fell into politics as a fluke accident, to be honest with you. Right after high school, I'm a daughter of refugees, grew up really poor, out in the country. At home, it was a lot of patriarchy where the girls had to wake up early at 6 a.m. to cook, and the boys just slept however long, right? I was the rebellious one. I said, no, I'm not doing that. And so I didn't do the whole waking up and cooking, and so I don't know really how to cook today. But But with all that being said, after high school, I left to go find myself. I got into a really bad domestic violence relationship, and 4 years later, I found myself pregnant, and he grabbed me by the hair off the bed, pulled me down, and started kicking me up, in my stomach. I was 6 months pregnant. And so for those many 4 years, I could not leave for myself, but I did not want my son to grow up in that environment. So I left and became homeless. I was ashamed, I was embarrassed. I was 20 years old. I assumed that my parents and family would never take me back because I had not spoken to them for that many years. And so lived in my car, had my child at county hospital. No one showed up. No one knew I was pregnant. And so just couch surfing and living in our car with my infant son, I decided I wanted to go back to school. I was such a great student in high school. I was an honor student, president of the Key Club for many years. And so wanted to get to paralegal studies and get out to start providing for my son. But then many others were supportive of me, like my teachers. They pulled me to the side one-on-one and said, you must go further. Go to law school. And so I said, okay. So my story is about a lot of people who believed in me before I believed in myself. And that's the key here, right? It's community building. It's someone else lifted me while I was trying to climb. And so I went and graduated valedictorian at the community college, transferred over to UC Berkeley, where I co-founded a food sustainability program called the Bear Pantry. And it's crazy because it's first of its kind. But we all hear starving students, but I guess no one really did anything about it. So many universities across the nation were flying in. Last semester of school, I was headed to law school. I needed money because I couldn't afford to pay for my son's clothes. He was outgrowing them quickly. And so I decided to look for a paid internship. And that paid internship was through APAPA. I did not know what they were, but they were. It's an organization that helps to get APIs into local politics. And I said, well, I'm API, and they're paying $1,000, so I'm pretty sure I'll get in. That's literally why I applied for it, for the $1,000. And they know that today. I'm like their first success story. Fluke accident. Yeah, right? And so got paired up at Oakland City Hall. And then I realized, oh my goodness, this is where all the legislation and policy, this is where laws are made that we in the community have to live by, that my family, which is a family that's on the margins, that's impactful, right? When you write policy and legislations, they impact those families that are on the margins the most. And yet those are the families that don't have a voice at the decision-making table because they don't have the time or capacity to even join in on the conversation because they're worried about getting food on the table, getting their kids to school, and working 3 to 5 jobs. And so for me, I just wanted to be a staffer to whisper things into the council member's ear. I was a staffer, community liaison, and then became policy director and then chief of staff. After 5 years at City Hall, community came to me and said, you have to run. And I laughed in their face because, again, like the speaker said, I don't look like a politician. And I'll just be very frank because I am. I said, well, I'm not white. Because in my mind, that's what you had to be. Because that's all that I saw, right? And that's a problem, right? And I said, and I don't come from money. I'm actually really poor. I'm just trying to get by as a single mom with my son. And they said, that's the reason why we want you to run. It's because you're not a politician, because you understand why we're fighting this fight. We need you to be our voice. And then I decided, okay, I will run. In 2018, nobody wanted to support me. The polls showed that I was flatline, and so that scared away everybody, including my consultant. She backed out. It was heartbreaking for me. But you know what? I was like, you know what? I've been through so much in my life. Whatever. I'll just run the campaign myself. Right? I was like, I grew up in the projects. I know how to hustle. I'll just do it. And then I'll knock on doors, I'll work hard, and if people like me, they'll vote for me. If they don't, then fine. It is what it is. This is a democracy. And so that's what I did. Well, I'll be honest, the first 2 weeks I tried to be a politician, it fell flat. And then I became myself, my genuine self, like I am today. and people loved it, and they voted for me, and I was voted into office in 2018, and it's ranked choice, but I was the top vote getter every single round, and they underestimated me. Everybody was shocked, and they were all working hard against me, but guess what? Who had my back? Working families. Working families had my back. It was the grocery workers, the bus drivers, the city workers. They all came out, walked my precinct with me, and encouraged people and told people she would be the best advocate for you. You know why? She's been advocating her whole life, advocating for her parents who didn't know English, who couldn't count money, you know, advocating and getting to the position she is now as a single mom, as a DV survivor, as a homeless person. She would be the best for you to get you a better quality of life. And they believed that. They believed them because that is my story. So being genuine and being who you are in politics is your strength. It's our superpower. Us as women, we have unique experiences. Don't ever allow for people to make you think or feel that that's a weakness. And always stick with the people who believe in you. And for me, that is the working families, labor unions. Even when the institution is up against you with big money, don't back down, don't be afraid, because you know why? We, as the minority groups, we work our asses off, and that's how we win. And when we call upon another sister like me to say, hey, I'm running and I need your help, we answer that call. And this is why we are in spaces like this. I don't know, how much time do I have left? Because I could keep going.
I'm just so inspired. I kind of lost track, but you have another minute or so.
Okay, because I was like, because you said somebody was going to keep time. I don't see them. Okay. Well, and that's just it. And so to this day, and I'm a person who can understand both sides, right? We have a huge debate right now in the nation around public safety. Ooh, sensitive topic. Why am I bringing it up? Because I bring it up because it is an important issue. I think that we truly need to invest in preventative measure, prevent the crimes before they happen, and that means investing in our young people, putting money in their pockets through paid internships, getting them access to great paying jobs so they can sustain and support their family. Because as a single mom, my kid was going to eat no matter what, and I didn't care how I was going to feed my son, because that's everybody. So we have to make sure the resources are there in the community. Right? And then at the same time, I'm a victim, right? My home, as a council member, my home was burglarized. My son was there. They saw him. They didn't care. They just kept going. Today, he turned 16, and guess what? He will not stay home alone. And we know that we need our police officers to respond to crimes like that. But they do not prevent crimes from happening. So we must invest in the forefront so that we can make sure that our officers are only responding to true crimes. And so there is a balance to be made here in regards to public safety. And I know that because growing up in the projects myself, it was only when the cops would roll through that I would run to the corner store and run back, because I didn't want to be harassed by the gangsters, the drug dealers, and the pimps. And that's my true story. And I tell people that. And I'm like, yes, they don't prevent crimes, but sometimes they do make you feel a little safer. But that's not the end-all, be-all. We must invest in violence prevention and violence interrupters, meaning getting to those, if someone is shot, getting to that other side's family or friends so that we make sure they put the guns down. Anyways, they're telling me to wrap up. So thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited to be in sisterhood with all of you. My name is Shang Tao, City of Oakland.
Thank you so much.
Oh, can I add one more thing? And guess what? I'm running to be Oakland's next mayor, and if I win, I'll be first Hmong American person in the nation to represent a big city like that. Yes.
Thank you so much, Sheng. I'm so inspired by your remarks, and I'm going to do a shameless plug here that APAICS is a fully funded congressional internship program all year long, so please come find me if you know anyone interested. Okay, so we'll go to Nima next.
All right. I'm so inspired by everybody in this room on this panel. I was telling Assemblywoman Wen yesterday, I was able to attend the dinner last night, and was so inspired by the honorees at the dinner as well, because I attend a lot of panels, I attend a lot of conferences in my work, both for my professional work and my legislative work, but this is a room full of people like me with a lot of shared experiences that I also experienced, and I cannot tell you how wonderful it is to be speaking with you all, seeing you all, being in community with you all here. So thank you for being here, first and foremost. I'm Nima Kokarni. I'm the first Indian immigrant to be elected to the Kentucky State Legislature. I was elected in 2018, sworn in 2019. So I have a very circuitous path. I was never the person thinking I'm going to run for office or public service. Nobody in my family is in politics or anything like that. I was born in India, and we moved to Louisville, Kentucky, so Louisville, while we're doing pronunciations. So people ask, all the time, why Kentucky? Like, did you not make a pit stop in New York or California or Chicago? But we moved to Louisville, and we had a pretty good life in India. So my dad was an executive at one of the largest steel companies in the world. I was born in like a steel town, Jamshedpur in India. And we left all that. We had a really good life. Everything was going well. But my brother had learning differences, and there wasn't a lot of support in India. There's not a lot of infrastructure there to accommodate people with learning differences back then. I don't know. I'm sure there have been strides made there now. But at the time, he just wasn't able to learn the way all the other kids were learning. And in India, as in most Asian countries and Asian households, we understand the importance of education for our children. We will do a lot to make sure that they get the education that they need. And so what my parents did was leave the country and go to Kentucky, because in Louisville there's a school called the DePaul School that specifically works with kids with learning differences. And so the entire reason I'm in this country and in Kentucky in the first place is because my parents valued education and making sure that my brother could get the education that he needed that much. And of course, it wasn't that I was an afterthought. There was a lot more opportunity for me here as well. Same very patriarchal society. You're expected to get married, have kids, and that's probably what would have happened had I stayed in India. But that story, that entire story of why we came here has informed my every decision, throughout my life. And as does what happened when we finally did move to Louisville. My dad's an executive. My mom, had a business, and both spoke English, both had degrees. We moved to Louisville, Kentucky. They can't find a job at all, anywhere, no kind of job. And so they had to borrow money, use savings, and figure out a way to basically buy a small corner grocery store. No experience. Neither of them had any experience with this. My dad was slicing deli meat in the back. My mom is stocking shelves. But they had to do something, right? They had to figure something out because they weren't able to get jobs. They have 2 little kids. It's a crazy decision that they've made, and they have to make it work. There's no option here. And so my dad did that, to make ends meet. My mom helped. I worked every Saturday at the store. I was given $1. I don't know where all that money went, by the way. It was never really handed to me. But I loved it. I loved that store. And, at the time, it was located in a neighborhood in Louisville called Germantown because most German immigrants lived there, and there were still a lot of older descendants that from that time. So it was a predominantly white, older neighborhood. We were probably the first brown people they had seen ever, and they couldn't pronounce my parents' names, and they called them Sam and Sue. Easy peasy. And really, what I remember most from that is how they welcomed us and accepted us. Nobody ever, thought to hurt us. Is that a 1-minute warning? Oh my God. I'm still over here in my childhood. Well, anyway, fast forward. Sorry. Fast forward to, informing my every decision. So My dad had several small businesses. I saw all this stress. I said, I'm never going to do that. I didn't really even plan on being an attorney. I wanted to do policy work, though. I know I was good at communicating. I was good at writing. Was not ever good at math or science, so that whole avenue was completely blocked early on for me. But I went to a very progressive law school. I had an immigration clinic there, which really inspired me because I saw that the law could be applied very directly and very intimately to a person's life, and you can look at the change that you've made. You can look at the difference that you've made in an individual and a family's life, which is why I became an immigration attorney. And that decision, so all of these series of decisions informed why I'm in office now, because when the Trump administration took power, and I say, I didn't mean power, that sounds terrible, but when they were in charge, immigration was like a cornerstone issue for them. Shutting it down was their entire goal. And I saw some of that rhetoric from the national level trickling down into Kentucky, which is nowhere near the border, very few immigrants generally. But I was looking around at our representatives and our officials and saying, who is saying anything against this? Who is standing up for immigrants? Who is standing up just against the hateful rhetoric that we're seeing and the escalation of all of that? Because as we know, that type of rhetoric, if we leave it unchecked, results in hateful acts. And we've seen that escalation, sadly and tragically, certainly in the past couple of years. But that's why I ran for office. My parents were visiting India, I think. When they flew back, I was like, oh, I've run for office. You have to help now. So when you say support system, it's mainly my family who are out knocking doors with me, driving me around. And it's a primary. So I want to also add that I ran against a 22-year Democratic incumbent because they weren't doing their job. They weren't showing up, and there was a change needed. The district that I represent includes the University of Louisville, so there's a huge diverse faculty, international students, and the district had changed in 20 years. I mean, quite frankly, it didn't look like the district that had elected this person that many years ago. And I knocked doors, because I also didn't know what I was doing. I mean, you kind of knew. I had no idea. I was like, something just has to change, so I'm going to do it. And so knocking doors was the thing that I was told. And the people that supported me were women, all women. There's not that many AAPI women in politics generally in Kentucky, but it was all women encouraging me, saying, don't worry, because the conventional advice was don't run against an incumbent. From nice people that liked me, because they didn't want me to get discouraged because surely I'm going to lose. So I won't run for anything again. Rap. Oh God. Okay. I wanna I want to just very briefly say that there's been so many comments made yesterday and today that have resonated. And one of the things that I want everyone here to understand is that there's no one path to get there, but we have to be at that table. We have to be in that room. And I cannot stress the importance of that enough, especially because no one party in this country, there's a two-party system, and I'm so glad you mentioned ranked choice. I'm a big proponent of that. Because it simply doesn't work. It does not include any choices, really. It does not include all the identities because there's no nuance allowed in a two-party system. And you cannot rely on Democrats and you cannot rely on Republicans to be there for you and to support you in the way that your community is going to be there for you and support you. And I think what we have seen, certainly in the rise of anti-Asian hate, in just the general shifting that we're seeing in intolerance in this country, I think we have to be our own voice in any given room, whether it's a boardroom, a classroom, in elected office, wherever you can be a voice for your community, you have to be that voice because there is usually not going to be any other person in that room who's going to be able to speak to that experience and that perspective. So I encourage all of you, yes, of course, we need everyone to run for office, but if you can't, which I understand it's a difficult choice to make, and not everybody has the bandwidth to do it, but do something in your day-to-day lives every single day, move that needle forward, because the more they hear from you, the more they see you, that's when the change really starts happening. And I'm sorry I went over, but I'm sure we'll have time to discuss further. But I'm so happy to be here and so happy to see everyone's smiling faces this morning.
Great. Thank you so much, Janie.
Good morning. How are we doing today? Happy Friday, happy July 1st, and most of all, happy July 4th weekend. Yes, 4-day weekend. So I want to thank all of you for being here. I mean, you should be out there enjoying the pool and all that stuff. And welcome to my hometown, also known as the Oven. My name is Janie. It's spelled Jan with a dash with a capital I-E. It's actually Chinese. It's Qianyi, Liu Qianyi. I know. Thought about changing my name just to make it easier for people to pronounce, but I kept it, right? I am Chinese descent with 1/16 of Thai blood. Yeah, so that I can own a Thai restaurant. That's my claim, right? Here in Vegas, unlike you all, I'm first of nothing, maybe first in line for the buffet line. But just to be clear, I am not an elected. I am an appointed position under the President Trump administration, as in the White House initiative, API. With that said, I do want to recognize a former Obama administration as well, Bill Imada. He's the only man in this room. Right, Bill? Would you stand up so they can see you? He says no. But you know what? Unlike this, he usually says yes to everything. So that's the biggest supporter I want you guys to know, right? So thank you, Bill, for being the only man in this room and and supporting the women. Love that, right? So a little bit of my background. I'll go fast because I'm scared of her, the timing, right? Originally from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. How many people know what Malaysia is or been there? Oh, I love this. Well-traveled. So it is a Muslim country, and back in the 80s, and I know I'm 50 now, but back in the 80s, back then, women in general, doesn't matter what ethnicity you are, there's just no career limit, I could be a secretary, maybe, right, if I'm lucky. So thanks to my parents, they saw that. So they decided to grab 4 of us. I'm the third one. 4 of us, a whole family, and migrated here to the United States. So we landed here at first to Little Rock, Arkansas in the 80s. I was the only Asian. But luckily, my uncle got transferred to Seattle, Washington, so in Tacoma. So there's more diversity up there, right? So when we got here, and I was 11 years old, heard my parents' advice, Janie, study hard, get straight A's, listen to your teachers, never talk back, and most importantly, do not get into politics, right? Got it, Dad, Mom, got it. So fast forward, we like to take family vacation, just like all Asian family, we do, right? It's like one of those Thanksgiving dinner, you love each other, but you really don't, but guilt, you gotta travel, right? So we came here to Las Vegas, 2003, 2002, summer vacation. Chinatown was, I think, just a building, right, Auntie Vita? I don't know, I mean, we're like, like all Asians, we come here, we love the steak, it was like $1.99 for a steak, right? We're like, doing it, we did it. After the second day, we're like, I want my rice. I need my noodles. I need my dumplings. So we headed down to Chinatown, which is nothing there, right? And I call my little brother, he's Stanford grad, ambitious guy. He's like, you know what? Let's all move over here and let's open a restaurant. Let's be the first one and the family owned and do all that stuff, right? We thought he was crazy, and we were all crazy, and we did it. We moved the family down here, right? Again, business, did all that stuff, right? No politics. Until once we opened our restaurant, this is 2004, late 4. I don't know if you guys, probably some of you are too young. Do you remember when smoking was still allowed in the restaurants? I mean, yeah. That's how we built our restaurant. We built a bar. We're like, yeah, the bar is where you're going to make the money, all the smokers and all this stuff. Well, guess what? 2006, the Nevada Clear Act came in. And as small businesses and entrepreneurs, we're like, not another regulations, not another rules, but guess what? We have to comply. But guess what? If you were casinos, sorry, casinos, you were exempt from this. You were exempt from this. And how fair is that, right? And Nimi, I know you're talking about policies, right? So us being the young, the Asian, young back then, right? We're like, nope, this is not right. We're gonna fight. And thank goodness we have some friends, good friends, who are in the media business, and they're like, you know what? You're all right. That is not fair. Would you like to get on TV? For sure, for me, I'm like, oh no, my brother's going to do it, right? So we did, and this is the start of how we actually got involved in politics. It's because we're small business owners, we're entrepreneurs. That's all we know what to do. But we like the guidelines as the lawyers say, you know, here are the rules, here are the regs, the HIPAA, the FMLA, all that stuff. Yes, I got all that. But when the policies are not fair and it's against the small little guys like us, that's when we decided that we need to find a voice. We need to step up and to the plate and start talking. Now, good or bad, we did. And I know there's a question that says, well, who support us? I know, I hate that question. Originally, I looked at it, I'm like, if we were men and up here, nobody will ask us, who supports you, right? So, but I get the question, why do we need to ask women that? Because at the end of the day, we are moms, we are daughters, you know, we are wives. Yes, I'll tell you the supporters out here, and I'll tell you Auntie Vita from ACDC, thank you for being a sponsor. She was the president of Asian Chamber back then, was it? Were you that? Maybe first? So thank you. I'll tell you, Mr. Billy Mata. That's how I met him. A lot of just all these network, and now I have new friends, Joanne from Walmart, Susie, NHPI, right? I see all this room, Jackie De Hoya, right, from NAFA. We were young professionals back then, not so much now, right? And today, or yesterday, and Judge, I met you, Judge, and Stephanie. I'll tell you, I love coming to this event is because I get to see my old friends, and I get to meet my new ones. So hopefully my panels, and right, Danielle, and APAICS, I'll tell you, I did go to the Asian prom in May, loved it. I hope all of you will join us in May as we celebrate our national AANPHI. If they add another letter, dear, I'm telling you, I don't think I can get it right. But I encourage all of you to just say yes. Just yes and figure out later, right? Sandra, you asked a question for MGM, right? Thank you for being a sponsor, right? You said, how do you get here? I'll tell you, it's because of all the love of our community, and for you to say, yes, I'll figure it out. So thank you for having me.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. We have a lot of similarities, yet very different paths, and so I really appreciated hearing everyone's stories. So now we're going to move to audience Q&A. So there will be a microphone floating around. Christina will be walking around. So please raise your hand if you have a question for our panelists. Oh, over there. Dana?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
You are our success story. But all of you here and all the panelists, you are all role models for us. And APAICS runs a very well-established internship program. And I wish all our interns are like you and all of you here. The question is, as you all say, we are in difficult times. And there's so much going on, anti-this, anti-that. How is it for you, for you all in the public, and what recommendation or tips you can give us?
Would you like to start?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Does APAPA still do $1,000 stipend? I really do want to know, just so I can get more APIs into this. No, I think that you're absolutely right. There's just so much tension out there. And I think that, and it's kind of sad sometimes when we don't look at the root causes, right? Right now in the city of Oakland, there are a lot of APIs who are being targeted for whatever reason it is, whether it's anti-Asian hate or whether it's a symptom of poverty. Right? You put a bunch of impoverished people together and they're fighting for limited resources, and that's a problem. And so for me, I think that the work that I've been doing is really bringing community together. Because when you bring different communities together and you teach each other about our shared identities, we have so much more in common than we do differences. And as leaders, I truly believe that it is our responsibility to break down any of those myths and ensure that we are very sensitive about not politicizing certain crimes as whether it's being a Black on Asian crime or you know, a Hispanic on Asian crime or what have you, that we look and truly see, and if it is, we call it out, absolutely. Representatives need to be on the ground, talking to community, making sure they're talking to each other so they can actually work together, because no one likes to be attacked. In every single community, doesn't matter what color you are, I think that if we bring everybody together, we can watch out for each other so that we keep each other safe.
Great, Nima?
So thank you. Is this on? Okay, sorry. Thank you for that question. I think on a very practical level, again, the importance of being there, being in that room. I can tell you that the Kentucky legislature didn't really know what to do with me as an Asian. So there are, you know, clear lines drawn between white and black in this country and in Kentucky. But I'm the only Asian. So it allowed me, I think, a little bit of wiggle room to try to, I do a lot of work with all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to get policy done, because that's why I'm there. I'm there to get good policy done and stop bad policies. And the importance, I'll give you an example. In 2019, I think it was, there was a law in Kentucky that was being proposed that was similar to Arizona. I think Alabama had it, which was basically like the show your papers, show me your papers law, which would have basically, if you're brown and the police stop you and you don't have like your passport or something, they could just sort of detain you, and it had terrible consequences in Arizona and was found unconstitutional. But after all of that, knowing all of that, Kentucky decided we're going to do our own here, and I guess they were just wanting the political soundbite because we don't have a ton of immigrants. So they're like, this isn't really going to impact anybody. And that's what I heard from everybody. This isn't really going to hurt anybody. Let's let them have it. I went straight to law enforcement. I went straight to the leadership of the majority party. I'm in the super minority in Kentucky. And was able to, just through conversations and through explaining, again, what our immigration system is, how this would impact everybody and not just whoever they think is like invading the southern border. But it was just a big issue right at the time, and was able to get that bill stopped, not even get a committee hearing. I mean, just stop dead. Like it wasn't even discussed, because it's important. It's difficult for people to be looking at you and listening to you make a little sense about this and how terrible it is. It was a budget year, by the way, so nobody wanted to take a position. That was the other thing. And everybody was like, I don't know, this isn't a thing. We're going to ask you for money, so we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to support you. That includes Democrats. That included a Democratic governor. And that's just what it is. So when I say no one's going to be there to support you in the way that you can support yourself or people in your community, that's a prime example of that. I think the other thing I would add is just, again, in any instance where you can be seen and heard, you have got to make yourself seen and heard. When the shootings happened in the Atlanta area, a huge tragedy, we organized a vigil. So I organized a vigil along with a lot of Asian organizations, Asian-focused organizations in Louisville, in like 2 days, right? Because it had just happened and people needed to come together. There was just a feeling of no one's talking about it. Again, in Kentucky, nobody was talking about it. It was something that happened in Atlanta. Nobody was discussing it, or the rise in anti-Asian hate generally, like none of that, none of those conversations were happening. So we organized this vigil in a matter of 2 days, like literally, and over 300 people showed up in person by the Ohio River to stand in solidarity. A lot of Asian Americans, a lot of different Asian groups came from not just Louisville, from all over Kentucky. There were a lot of non-Asian people there just to show support and solidarity and say, we don't agree with this. We think this is bad, and we're going to stand with you in opposition. Things like that, I think. And again, out of that vigil, I got so many messages from, at least 100 more people saying we wanted to be there, but we couldn't for whatever reason, because it was just in the middle of the day, et cetera. And so this conversation about this podcast came up because I called one of my friends who I'd just met, so she wasn't quite my friend then, but I knew we would be very close. So in Berea, Kentucky, which, is a tiny little town, but a very, it's got Berea College. Is that my warning? Oh, no. I'm going to ignore it. So just in these little pockets, I called her. I said, what can we do? We need to create a space, just an ongoing, sustainable space for AAPI voices to be heard. And she called somebody in Lexington, who called somebody who lives in Louisville but is originally from northern Kentucky. And the four of us, Filipino, Thai, Chinese, and Indian, have created this podcast called Where Y'all Really From to highlight AAPI voices and experiences and stories in our Commonwealth. So it's Kentucky specific, and it really is just to create a space for those voices to be heard, again, to increase the visibility and the dissemination of just what the Asian experience is in Kentucky. And it had the backing of Louisville Public Media, which it was their first they have a podcast incubator, and has been hugely successful. We're working on season 2 right now. But it's those types of very practical, tangible things, which don't always mean policy, doesn't always mean a giant protest, or it can be small, little acts like that move the needle forward in your day-to-day. And again, I could not have done any of those things had I not been plugged into these groups and in my position. And so what are you using your positions for, I think, is another question I would ask each of you, because there are things you can do in your day-to-day lives to stop that, the rise in hate, and to stop people from making assumptions and stereotyping, because now they know somebody, and they can't so readily other anybody in our community.
Thank you. Marcia, thanks for the question about anti-hate, right, AAPI. And just because it doesn't happen to you doesn't mean it doesn't happen, right? So I think we're fortunate enough in Las Vegas, Nevada, that we are very diverse. But unfortunately, if you're in Seattle, LA, San Francisco, where I have friends out there, they do feel that. And I think for us, what can we do? What can each of us do? And I think it's just, honestly, I think it's a mental health. Anybody who resort to violence against any ethnicity, there's something wrong with that person. They like to prey on the weak. If you notice, they prey on the older, elderly folks, right, out there. And I pray for those that they need to get some help. And I think that's where, for me, as a non-elected official, we can do things by talking about it and coming up with solutions and resources. In fact, this past May, during AAPI Heritage Month, I know normally we like to celebrate, but the Las Vegas Okinawan Club actually put on a roundtable, and we invited Metro, we invited the FBI, we invited mental health professionals, as well as UNLV and professional staff, because Bill, we all know, data. We need the data to show what happens, right? But guess what about our AAPI, NPHI, excuse me, Susie, right, community that we don't do. We don't report. We just sit there. If it happens to us, you're like, you know what? It's partially my fault. I was out there at midnight doing some kind of shopping. I shouldn't be out there anyway. Right? So we come up with tons of ideas like saying, it's us, it's not them. So Marcia, when you ask that question, I would answer that we should talk about it, because unfortunately, we don't need events like Georgia to let all of us come together and unify and do a march, right? Marchers are great, I'll tell you. Hey, I do a parade here in Las Vegas. Our Asian American and Native Hawaiian, we don't like marches. We don't like to parade. But for real causes, we do. And I think those are great because the media loves that. But what we need to focus on is solution, right? What are we going to do as a community? And you don't need to be an elected official to come up with solutions. So I empower each and every one of you to get involved with organizations, whether it be APAICS, APAPA, OCA, JACL. I mean, I can give you a whole list. We have all of them. But united, we are stronger. Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have time for one last question. So any questions? Yep.
Okay, thank you. Well, I was really inspired by all of the speakers. I'm Tara from Santa Clara County. Hello, Councilmember Thao, our neighbor. So I want to ask, like, what are some ways you're fostering the next generation of leaders and API female leaders?
Okay, Nima, let's start with you now.
So what I have been super, super encouraged by the number of young Asian women specifically who have come to me and said exactly what you said. What can I do? How can I get involved? I see how important this is now. And I see that you've done this, so it's not so weird. It's a normal career path that I can maybe think about pursuing. The thing I tell them is to volunteer on campaigns, to shadow legislators or Metro Council members, to just see what is going on. And I know in Kentucky, and certainly I'm sure there are versions of this, we have a PAGE program where young kids can be on the floor of our house doing like little errands or filing papers, taking things up to the clerk, getting coffee. And it sounds, unimportant, but you really get to see how business is conducted on the floor. You get to meet the legislators. It is like apolitical. Everyone loves these cute kids running around. And everyone goes out of their way to meet them and talk to them. And a lot of people that have since, worked on campaigns, worked in our Legislative Research Commission, started as pages and got introduced to that world and then progressed however they needed to in sort of politics and policy. I think being able to be in that world as well, whether on a campaign or shadowing someone in their day-to-day, gets you introductions to people. So if you're in college and you have like UK or U of L college Dems or Republic, whatever I keep saying Dems, I have to. But that's just what I'm familiar with. But you'll have groups, right, in various universities who will also have connections. But I think the goal is to build networks and build kind of a roster of names you can call on to then get advice from, but really just to get in there and see what these people are doing every day. Like, what is their day-to-day? What kind of policy are they working on? What are they speaking out on? And a lot of times they'll come back angry and say, they didn't speak out about this issue that I'm very interested in, so I'm going to get more involved, which is always the best news to hear.
Great, Janie?
Sure. You know what? Mentorship, internships, right? It doesn't have to be an organization, right? I'll tell you, yesterday, Dr. Martha Wong, I love her story. And I'll tell you, when she'll take a call, right? Just go out there, make the first call if I think if you're looking for something to do, something to meet, because the answer's no anyways. So pick up the phone and call anybody. Right next to you, right behind you, I see Joanne from Walmart. She's here. She's taking her Friday weekend to be here. So I think that in this whole room, I take on a lot of mentees, even without knowing them, right? But because I answer that call, it can be just a quick question. It doesn't mean like, here's the lineup and here's a 12-week internship program, because I'll tell you, that scares me, right? I just want to say, you know what, I'm a resource. All of us here are a resource. So nice thing about COVID is that it kind of broken up that barrier that you have to be in the same state, right, or city, or to get a mentor. I'll tell you, you don't have to. That's why, there's iPhone, there's Zoom, right? So I just encourage you to do that and be a mentee and be a mentor. How's that?
Great, thank you. Sheng?
Yes, absolutely. Again, my motto is lift while you climb. I wouldn't be where I am today without people supporting me. And I still have a strong group of people who support me that expand way across further than my arm, and a lot of you are in here. It's that sisterhood, right? I can call on, as I'm running for mayor, I've called on Madeline, like, I need help, and she's there. And there's so many others that I call. But at the same time, I'm also lifting. And so when someone calls upon and say, hey, I'm not sure, like right now I'm mentoring about 4 candidates. And it's just not about mentoring, but for me, it's about being intentional. So it's not about only when they pick up the call, I'm checking in on them, saying, hey, how are you doing? Where's your fundraising at? Okay, you're not gonna meet your goal. Let me help you get some other folks. Let me introduce you to some of the folks who can get you to your goal. It's like, do you have a forum coming up? Like, I'm intentional by asking because I know that it's scary to ask somebody, right? Because I'm still doing that to this day. And it's people like Madeline who are like, look, I don't care what your question is. It's not ever stupid. Like, just ask me, because, you know, you gotta have, you know, these are people who have been in this space. They know it, they've heard it. And so, like, why not share the information? So for me, and I think that if you all have mentees, ask them the questions. You know, where are you at? There's never a wrong answer. I'm just going to help you. You know, for me, if I know that there's a forum coming up for them, I call them and I say, hey, come on over. We need to practice. We need to practice this dialogue back and forth so that you can be on point for your forum. I don't wait for them to ask me. I make sure that my mentees know that I'm watching what they're doing. Even though I'm doing my own thing over here, I'm proactively watching them, because their success means that I am successful in not just what I'm doing in my leadership position, but that I am successful in building the pipeline. We have to build the pipeline and be intentional. And also, as a council member, when I honor people, I make sure to honor those who are in the minorities. So for me, this whole past year, I've been honoring all of, like, Native Hawaiians, our Samoan brothers and sisters, our Tongan brothers and sisters in the Bay Area, because I want to uplift their voices, because I know that they're not in our spaces right now, and that is not okay. Right? And so, you know, it's about being proactive when you are a leader. Just don't wait for people to come to you and be like, can you be my mentor? No, no, no. You got to spot the superstars out, right? And you all are superstars in here. All I ask in return is dedication and hard work. That's it. That's the prerequisite.
Great, thank you so much. I would love to continue this conversation and hear the more inspiring stories and advice and recommendations. I would love to be your mentee. So unfortunately, we're at time. So let's give these ladies a round of applause for serving as panelists today. Thank you so much.